What's good, y'all? We got an interesting scrap going down tonight. Jamel Herring versus Shakur Stevenson. If you're a boxing fan, this is actually a very interesting matchup. It's too bad these guys aren't more well known because it'd probably be a very exciting fight in general. But it's going to be more so for the hardcore fans. There's a very interesting narrative between these two. They have a history with each other. They both have trained or sparred against each other and trained in the same camp with Terrence Crawford and Bomac. And Bomac's going to be the lead trainer for Jamel Herring in this fight. So a lot of interesting stuff. I'll kind of get into that at the back end of the video. I have to make a prediction and I have to break down the fight and talk about the keys to the fight and how I think each fighter will approach it stylistically, or what I think they're going to do tactically and stylistically in this fight. And I should let you guys know I'm going to do a little live analyzing of the fight and commentating. No, I cannot put the video up of the fight, and no, I cannot even put the audio up of the fight, or it's going to get flagged like my last live show did with Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. But anyhow, let's get into it. So, keys to the fight. What does Shakur Stevenson need to do? Now, I think Shakur Stevenson can win this fight in a few different ways, whether he wants to box off the back foot or press forward or kind of mix it up between, or kind of just mold and flow into the situation. But I believe he needs to make a statement for this fight. He needs to let the boxing world know, like, yo, I'm here, I'm this young, hungry lion, and I'm coming to take over, because he also needs to market himself for the future. And if he decides to box off the back foot and play it very safe for this fight, it's one thing if he needs to do that, right? And Jamel Herring's presenting issues. But if he's just kind of coasting through and just kind of getting through this matchup and playing it safe, I don't think that's a good thing, even if he gets the win. He needs to make a statement. So I think he needs to press forward. And I actually think it'll benefit him more if he presses forward in this fight. I think he could get a TKO or even a knockout. And even if he doesn't, he'll win convincingly on the scorecards and he'll put on a impressive performance. So put pressure if you're Shakur Stevenson. Look for the fight. Use your defensive ability, right, to get out of range or roll with those punches when Jamel Herring comes with his own attack. But immediately after, get back into the fight and press forward. The reason why I think Shakur should do this, because I think he's more dynamic when he goes up against southpaws. The last southpaw I saw him go up against, he looked like he had a full arsenal. His jab was a lot more active compared to when he faces an orthodox fighter. You know, he was letting his hands go punches and bunches up top stairs to the head. Not only that, but down to the body. His use of angles were phenomenal. And he was putting pressure in that last fight he went up against the southpaw. Now, part of that was because the guy he was going against was a little undersized, so he probably was able to take a little bit more risk. Jamel Herring's going to have more reach or a little bit more range than Shakur Stevenson in this fight. Going to be a little bit more rangier. But I do really believe that Shakur Stevenson is more dynamic when he faces another southpaw, because he has a lot more available to him in terms of angles and positioning. So I think he should press forward. I think he should look for the fight. He doesn't necessarily need to cut off the ring, put in pressure, okay? I would like to see him cut off the ring. I don't think that's going to happen, though. But I really do believe if Shakur Stevenson learned the art of cutting off the ring, he would be a lot more effective if he did want to put pressure moving forward in his up-and-coming fights. I think he would get more TKOs and KOs. But I don't think he needs to necessarily cut off the ring tonight. I just think he needs to put pressure with angles. And, you know, look at a guy like Pretty Boy Floyd, the early version of Floyd Mayweather when he was considered a knockout artist. He was putting pressure with angles. He would be in front of you all night. He would make you miss, and then he would counter you punches and bunches, and he'd get you out of there. Same with we see with Vasily Lomachenko, you know, in a lot of his fights. Doesn't necessarily always cut off the ring when he's putting pressure, but he'll put pressure with angles, be in front of you all night, make you miss, and then punish you and no mas. That's what Shakur Stevenson needs to do, and he needs to do that so he also makes himself marketable in the future. And you can only do that by making a big statement tonight and taking some risk. And why not do it with Jamel Herring? This is why he needs to take a risk tonight, because he's familiar with Jamel Herring. He's sparred with him. That's part of the reasons he's so arrogant and cocky in this fight, because he probably knows, like, I got this dude beat. I know everything he's going to come with, and I know I'm that much better than with him. So why not take the risk? You have a little bit of insurance coverage behind you. You know, this is the fight where you can go for broke a little bit more, you know, where you can let your hands fly a little bit more, where you can try and get a knockout. That's a little bit harder to do when you go up against a good opponent, and there's that unknown factor that you have, and you don't know whether it's worth it to take the risk and try to take chances in a fight. So Shakur Stevenson, press forward, let your hands go, establish your jab, throw rip combinations to the head, to the body, use your defense ability just enough to get out of range, and then get back into the fight and continue to press forward. On top of that, Jamel Herring has a little bit of reach advantage over him, so why not be the undersized guy and look for the fight and try to get inside? Not particularly inside. Well, actually, yeah, it wouldn't be bad for Shakur Stevenson even to work some of his inside game, because I think he's a lot sharper. I think he has a little bit more speed and power, and I think he's a little bit more effective with his body work and hooks to the body when working on the inside against the southpaw. So press forward if you're Shakur Stevenson. I think your boxing ability and how dynamic and talented he is will show. Now, for Jamel Herring, here's the thing. I think Jamel Herring is kind of one-geared. He's a good boxer. But he's kind of one-geared. And one of the things I don't like for him in this fight, he's going up against the southpaw. He doesn't seem to be as effective against southpaws as he is orthodox fighters. He looks a lot sharper. He looks like he knows what he's looking for more when he goes up against orthodox fighters. Because the last two southpaws I've seen him go against, there were two different southpaws stylistically. One was a pressure fighter coming forward constantly and cutting off the ring, and the other was more defensive counterpuncher. And Jamel Herring struggled with both, and I noticed that his jab faded over each round in those fights. I noticed that his body work started to fade in each round, and I also noticed that he tends to get lost. It's almost like he starts to freeze mentally, very reminiscent of what happened to AJ in the Usyk fight. You know, you had this you have Anthony Joshua, who's not the most sophisticated boxer, and when he had an opponent across from him who was more dynamic, he got lost. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have a response or a rebuttal for what Usyk was when Usyk was making adjustments. And don't get me wrong, Jamel Herring's a significantly better boxer than Anthony Joshua, but I think he's still kind of stuck in one gear compared to Shakur Stevenson, because I do think Shakur Stevenson has potential to do a little bit of everything, whether it come forward, go backward, fight in the pocket. Even though we haven't seen too much of that from Shakur Stevenson, I still think he's capable of it. He's a very talented fighter. Jamel Herring has tried those things at certain points in fights. He has tried exchanging in the pocket. He has boxed, tried to press forward at times, but what he does well is staying on that outside to mid-range and counterpunching. So what he needs to do is, the funny thing is that this favors both fighters. You know, it favors Shakur Stevenson to press forward, and it favors Jamel Herring to have Shakur Stevenson press forward. But this is where my prediction comes in. I think that Shakur Stevenson is going to win this fight. And I would not be shocked if it's a TKO. I would not be shocked if it's a TKO or Shakur wins in decision. I would say if it's going to be a TKO, it'll probably be around the 8th to 12th round range. And obviously pending on, you know, Shakur Stevenson isn't taking this fight for granted. But it's kind of weird because I'm sitting here and I'm telling you guys, like, okay, Shakur Stevenson, the best thing for him to do is press forward, and the best thing for Jamel Herring is to have Shakur Stevenson press forward. But here's the way I put it. and I know this might be confusing, it's the best chance for Jamel Herring to have Shakur Stevenson press forward. It's his best chance at winning. And that's part of the reason I think Bomac was talking a lot of junk at the weigh-in and the face-off, because he's probably trying to get Shakur Stevenson not so much emotional, but just get that young man energy of recklessness and aggression to come out, because I think he knows Jamel Herring's best when he gets to be the counterpuncher, when he doesn't have to be the aggressor, when he can kind of box on the outside to mid-range. And I think Bomac understands, like, look, our best shot is to get this, to provoke this guy, to make him the bull, and Jamel Herring be the matador. And if he can be the bull all night, maybe we can outbox him. Maybe we can outbox him. And I think that's Jamel Herring's best shot. A lot of people are saying he needs to press forward and make Shakur Stevenson fight. I don't think that's the way to go. Like, don't get me wrong, there should be pockets to where he pushes forward, because he's going to need to do that, especially if it goes to the scorecards. But that's not his game, in my opinion. I think he needs to just try to do whatever he can to get Shakur Stevenson to lead the dance so he can do what he does best, and that's counterpunch. My thing with Jamel Herring, if I would just add a little bit more to changing up the looks as you're trying to box from the outside to mid-range. He tends to get very, very predictable. He will move in the same direction as he's boxing, and his jab tends to fade away once he goes against southpaws. The body work starts to disappear. What I want to see Jamel Herring do is give different looks. I want to see him feinting more. I want to see him working out to mixing it up, going left to right. I want to see him be a little bit more comfortable with his back to the ropes and the corner, and be more defensive, okay, when he does get his back to the corner and to the ropes. But for him, the key to the fight is obviously trying to make Shakur the aggressor, but also when you're fighting and you're being on the outside to mid-range, you're boxing off the back foot, looking for counters, change up your looks. Do not be predictable. Move around in different ways, change levels, feint, mix it up. Do not become predictable. That's the key to the fight for Jamel Herring. Don't be predictable. Don't be predictable in what you are doing. Keep it within your lane, right? Don't try to become a pressure fighter. Don't try to become a dog overnight. I'm not saying Jamel Herring's not that, but that's not his style. That's not his way of fighting. I wouldn't consider him a style bender. Don't get out of your lane, but be as dynamic as you can within that lane, right? Okay, so think about a jab. We're not talking about the cross, the hook, the uppercut. Just think about the jab. You can throw a jab. It's one punch, but you can throw it in so many ways. You can change your level and throw it. You can throw it in a basic manner. You can throw it vertically. You can throw it horizontally. You can flick it. There's a lot of ways you can throw a jab. So just because Jamel Herring is one gear doesn't mean he can't be creative and dynamic with that one gear. So the key to the fight is for Jamel Herring to let Shakur Stevenson lead the dance, and then do what you do best. Box on the outside to mid-range, but make sure you're not becoming predictable. Another key to the fight for Jamel Herring is to stick with the jab. Stick with the jab and stick with your body shots. Now, I want to see Jamel Herring throw more punches and bunches to the body, because he tends to pot shot instead. Okay, I want to see him rip combinations to the body, because Shakur Stevenson will go to the body. And like I said, against southpaws, he tends to look very, very good. He tends to let his hands go. So he's going to need to match that body attack. So let's summarize this one more time. If you're Jamel Herring, you need to stick within your lane. Do what you do best. Be a mid to outside range fighter. Don't get out of yourself. Let Shakur Stevenson lead the dance. Okay. let him be the aggressor. Let him be the bull. You be the matador. You know, stick with your jab throughout the fight. Do not abandon it. Rip combinations to the body. Do not abandon it, or at least match what Shakur Stevenson is doing. And that will give Jamel Herring his best shot at winning. But I think Shakur Stevenson is going to win this fight by TKO, or it's going to go to the scorecards. If it does happen by TKO, it's going to happen around that 8th to 12th round range. I just think Shakur is the young, hungry lion. I think he's confident. I think he's quick, he's fast, he's stronger than Jamel Herring. And I like Jamel Herring. I would not be mad if he won this fight. I'm rooting for him. You hear a story about his daughter passing away. It cuts deep. I can relate to it to a certain extent because I'm going through health issues with my baby boy. So I would be very happy if Jamel Herring won. Plus, on top of that, he was a Marine. He served our country. He's a classy dude. He's a humble dude. But man, Shakur Stevenson, he's hungry, man. It seems like he's hungry. And it's going to be a very interesting dynamic we see play out because they're all kind of connected with each other. Bomax connected with them all. Terrence Crawford connected with them all. Jamel Herring and Shakur Stevenson have worked together. So very interesting narrative. And the play up to the fight with the weigh-ins and the face-off, I mean, Shakur was just so disrespectful. I wish Jamel Herring stood up for himself a little bit more and not let him touch his belt the way he did. But that's just Jamel Herring. That's his personality. He's not, you know, I would say, as contradicting as it sounds, a very confrontational dude. But he will let his fists speak for him in the ring. But I think it'll be a good fight, you guys. I think it'll be a good one. But if Shakur Stevenson sits back and, you know, he tries to cruise through this, it's not going to be, it could be boring. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's a lot to prove for Shakur Stevenson, and he wants to make a statement. So that being said, let me know what you guys think. Comment below, like the video. Who do you think's going to win? How do you think they're going to win? And if you're a new subscriber, let everybody know we're trying to build this channel and this family. This is your boy Havoc with Final Round. Tune in tonight, man. If you're interested in hearing some analysis and live commenting, maybe you can even get the fight and you can sync it with my commentating. But even if you don't, man, it's all good, man. It's your boy Havoc with Final Round. Get at me.